through your phone.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Participation details are available on the agenda. If you're on your phone, it's a *9 to raise your hand and a *6 to unmute yourself, should you be, again, doing it through your phone. So with that, we'll get started with the agenda items. And number one is roll call determination of a quorum. So I think just state your name and you're present, and that will be good for item number one.
John Broderick, present.
Coyle
Tracy
Falk,
Woods.
present.
Tracy Woods, present.
Danielle Muniz, present.
Great, thank you, everybody. And we have a full board this evening. Moving on to item number two, which is AB 361. This is resolution. It says 2207, might be 2301, but regardless of the number, the resolution is related to our ability to continue holding these meetings in the virtual setting. And this would be effective from tonight through for 30 days from tonight. And so we'd be looking, well, if there's any discussion on it or a motion to approve the continuation of the remote meetings.
Motion to approve AB 361.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Sequoia. And before we move into the vote on that, I would just like to note for a discussion on the motion that there is at the very end of the general manager report, note that the in-person meetings will be returning starting as soon as March, or the next meeting after March. And so at our February meeting, we could bring more information back to the board and for the community on what that looks like and what will be planned. But essentially the emergency declaration through the governor's office for related to COVID-19 is ending at the end of February. And that essentially is the basis for the remote meetings that we're having. So that'll change. So that ends at the end of February. So March or the next meeting after March will likely be in person or hybrid option. So something to keep in mind, but I think we'll bring more information back at the next meeting before we do that. So just give everybody a heads up on that. Is there any questions on that? If not, I would ask for a vote on the motion to approve the AB 361 resolution. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say no. Thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Next, we're moving on to the number 3, which is agenda modifications or approval of this agenda. Are there any agenda modifications this evening? Seeing none, we'll proceed with the agenda as advertised as we should, but also noting that there is not any additional information that has come out since the posting of this agenda. Thank you. Public input, petitions, and announcements. This is item number 4 on the agenda. This is the time of the meeting when the public is invited to speak on items that are not on the agenda. It could be a petition, make announcements, or provide other information. There would be a 3-minute limit to people to provide comments during this time. By law, the board cannot take action on the items brought up on items not on the agenda. It is, it is a public comment time and not a conversation. With that said, is there any members of the public who would like to speak on an item not on the agenda? Seeing one, Carol Vandermeer, go to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to introduce myself not only as a community member out here in Manila, but I have a new hat that I wear at Redwood Community Action Agency as a project coordinator. And one of the projects that I'm working on is the Peninsula Beautification Project, which I think you've all heard about. I just put a kind of a basic fact sheet about this, and this has been talked about with improvements to the community park, and also some events that are coming up. So this fact sheet just sort of summarizes that this is part of a Caltrans Clean California grant. We have a lot of improvements that are planned throughout the peninsula. Some of these improvements have been discussed at the Peninsula Community Collaborative meetings. I encourage people to come there if they want to get a little more input or get on our mailing list at least. You know, the goals, you know, are really to help reduce litter, beautify the peninsula, make it a safe and welcoming space for all, and engage the community in participation. And so some, I won't talk about these things now, but some of the things that appear on your agendas, you know, are around some of these improvements, including, and this is not just in Manila, but up and down the peninsula, murals and different art installations. We'll have signage. We'll have, like this weekend, we're having a community cleanup event happening on Saturday in Manila, but we'll have them scheduled throughout the peninsula. And this is a collaborative project with the community, with support from RCAA, and the Humboldt Bay Harbor District is actively involved in this as well. So I just wanted to introduce myself that way. And Chris, you have also the flyer for the event this weekend. Are you able to share that as well?
Yes, it's gonna look a little funny here, but
Oh
you
yeah, sorry, I forgot to send the attachment, but anyway.
here it is.
Yeah, we are having an event this Saturday, and I've already had people volunteer to help. Thank you. That is going to start at the Manila Community Park between 10:30 and 12:30 is kind of a community event, cleanup. We'll be removing ivy. We'll be doing a number of things. And then at the district office, we'll actually have a dumpster where people can take this opportunity to clean up around their properties. We just really want to beautify the communities around the peninsula. It's free. We'll have it open from 10 to 4 or until filled. And then it'll be locked up, and we can use it for cleaning up other dump sites and things like that. So it's exciting. I feel like really grateful to be a Manila resident and have an opportunity to work in beautifying the community in which I live. And that's a pretty exciting prospect. So please get on the email list if you aren't already on the Peninsula Community Collaborative. Keep up to date on these things. You can reach out to me if you have questions. I'll probably appear from time to time with my RCA hat on, and I'll try to let you know when I'm speaking as a resident and versus a staff person. I guess this is not a time for questions. It's just a time for announcements. So unless there's something you need clarification on. I hope people will come out. Like the flyer shows, it should be nice weather on the weekend. Time to get out and do some fun things.
Carol, do you have all the volunteer spots filled at the district for the, I think you mentioned you needed like half-hour spots?
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, well, Chris has offered, but I know I'd like to get Chris over at the park too, but I think Nancy offered to do from 10 to 10:30. It's
Okay.
just, we need to just make sure that people abide. We'll have a big poster on the dumpster that says, you know, what is not allowed. And we don't want, I know in the past we have had experience where people just come and then they pile up more stuff. We'll have more dumpster days coming up. So yeah, if you would want to volunteer, just send me an email and I'll.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Any other questions about that? I think that's it. So I'll send out a flyer and maybe you can post those at the district office too and let people know what's going on. So thanks.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Appreciate it. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, I will close this portion of public comment on the agenda and move on to agenda item number 5. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chris for a summary.
Thank you very much. Normally we would do this organizational meeting in December, but as you're aware, we had a little bit of an earthquake and we had to cancel our meeting. So we're postponing this until tonight. And normally it's somewhat of an informal process where members would identify an office that they would like to have. And some agencies actually rotate presidents and vice presidents and things like that. We usually stick with what we have been doing or what we like to do or what's working best for us. So if you've read the staff report, you could see that all you have to do is nominate somebody for a position, or we could move to leave positions the way they are and let things settle out for the first year or so with the new members. We do not have a secretary currently, which is a very important role for the district that we send a lot of our written communications to other agencies, and we need a signatory on that. So it would be good to appoint somebody tonight for secretary. And if it's not our new member, Tracy Woods, and we'll be moving some people around. So I'll leave it to the board to discuss further. And if you have any questions about what any of these specific seats mean, I'll be more than happy to dive into those with more detail.
Thank you, Chris. Does anyone have any questions for Chris on this item right now?
I have a question, or a couple of questions. How did the representatives get chosen, or when did those positions become available? What are they for?
The Humboldt representative is for the Water Task Force, and I meet with the Humboldt Bay every month. There's a staff level municipal meeting, and then there's a higher level elected official meeting, which is what this position is. I don't believe that the task force has been convened since before COVID. And that convenes when there is a major policy decision for Humboldt Bay water, something to do with perhaps water rights or the dam, or something much bigger than just staff level, or just something that we would be deciding with our informal meeting. So right now, Megan is the representative for that, and we haven't convened a water task force yet. That's what that position does. The REDEC position, I believe it allocates, I've been kind of out of the loop with that. It's they issue loans, I believe. Danielle, I'm sure, can describe that seat far better because she's been involved in that, but it's I believe it's the Headwaters Fund and how they allocate those resources to other processes.
It's a portion of the Headwaters Fund, but I think REDAC itself has its own revolving loan fund that within the last 2 years has actually been like defederalized. So previously the money was used for really specific economic impact, but they've just started to be able to kind of broaden the loan people who can apply for the loans and what that means. So, but typically it's just different board members from each of the communities come together and learn about different, economic development opportunities. So there's usually, a presentation from the airport, from, Cal Poly, trying to think who else, the Humboldt Forward or Future Humboldt, the new group. There's a new group that's just started. I think it's a tri-county area grant. We actually haven't met in the last 2 months because of the holidays and everything. So, but that's the gist of what, they have the Economic Resilience Consortium that meets as a side group of that. And it's just a really interesting group of people. And, you often hear and see different presentations about things in the community that I'll usually try and bring back to the board monthly. We meet the week prior, so it's usually about three weeks after the meeting is when I present it to you all.
Okay.
I guess it would be the representative reports it to you all. If it's something you sound like you're, feel like you'd be interested in or wanted to come as me. I don't know that we have an alternate appointed. I'm not sure. So, I think there is room to appoint alternates for these positions as well.
Yeah, no, financing isn't my forte. So, but no, it sounds very interesting. So when they have, you go to these meetings and you learn about the different development programs available, then you come back and how do you let the community know about these programs, or are they for personal or just for individuals or the varied, like for agencies?
It's varied. It's not typical for an agency to apply for this type of loan. Like Dick Taylor Chocolates has been a successful, recipient of this award. I'm trying to think of who else comes to mind right now. The airport is another big focus of the group. And so Greg Foster, who's the manager, I think he does spend some of his time working with the airport to sort of build connections and bring in, like the different airlines that have come in, and the cafe that's just opened recently, I think was a part of the revolving loan fund. So growth
Okay.
in those types of areas.
Yeah, now I understand more clearly about what it is. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. It was a good explanation. I understand. The representative or the position I was interested in was the Humboldt Bay. Sorry about my cat. That was the water, because I have over 25 years of water experience. I thoroughly understand our state system and how things are levied. But yeah, Secretary, I don't know about signing things. I haven't been involved that long. Like this meeting, so I don't know about signing documents for for the district at this time. If anyone wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I think, Chris, at least if you could explain more on what the expectation of what you're actually signing is for that, it would probably help.
Yeah, first of all, no board member individually has any more culpability than any other board member at any time. And you only really exist as elected officials in this body with a quorum present. And that being said, I'm the legal secretary and the legal treasurer of the district. And these other positions are secondary to as backup and a second set of eyes. So your name on the bottom of a grant or an application or something like that is more it officially just memorializes the fact that the board had reviewed it, and it doesn't give you any more culpability to.
Just more administrative.
It's more of a problem or an opportunity for you to be involved, where you would come into the office and sign documents that we could scan, or if you could do it electronically. Our former secretary, Dave Janetta, I would send him a PDF and he could return it signed electronically. That's kind of going away now that COVID's kind of wrapping it up. So that would be a little bit resource intensive for you to come meet with us. I could always deliver things to your house if that was required, but just pragmatically or legally speaking, there's really no more liability on your end than being in any other position.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's more like administrative.
Yeah.
The position, and it's not, okay. I can go to the office and pick something up to read. It's no problem there.
Okay.
Sorry, my cat's crying.
No problem. So it's office space. Well, maybe if everyone thinks this is a good idea, I would suggest that perhaps we go through there's the 5 different roles: president, vice president, financial officer, secretary, safety officer, and perhaps whether you want to nominate somebody or nominate yourself or continue in the role you're in, or you could mix it up to another role. Why don't we just see what volunteers we have? And then maybe we can see what we have for volunteers, and then we'll go to like nominations and, to select anything that might be open after we see who would nominate themselves, if that sounds like a good strategy for getting through these. And we've done this in past meetings, the idea of a straw vote. And so that wouldn't like lock us into anything, but let's say somebody nominates themselves or 2 people want to do a position, we can kind of do a straw vote between the board members to see where we're going to land, to make a decision that way before we confirm the final.
And we can nominate other people for positions.
Yes. So interest in a position, or nominate another member for a position.
I was just gonna say, if you're still up for it, Megan, I was gonna nominate Megan Ryan to continue as president. I feel like she's been doing an excellent job. I don't know if anyone has other ideas though.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And I would also nominate myself, so to keep going. I think it has been working for us, so happy to continue in this role.
I guess I don't even really have a clear understanding what the finance officer or the safety officer does.
Okay, yeah,
That would help me.
okay, sure, let's, yeah, Chris.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yes, I'll run through all of them briefly. The president obviously chairs the meetings and meets with staff about a week in advance to go over the agenda and sets the tone and timing and of all the business matters for the district. The vice president, which is today you, John, do that same thing in a backup capacity. The finance officer reviews all disbursements from the district, and Danielle and I are going through that today, where I've kind of, I think, tripped up a little bit in getting this material to her, and she would review, look for invoices and checks and be a second set of eyes on all of our disbursements. So we don't wind up with something like you're reading in the Lost Coast Outpost with the county fair accounting and things like that. And we like that. We all want more eyes on everything. So the finance officer actually gets a little bit higher stipend, by the way, for that duty. Everybody else gets the same $90. The secretary, as I said earlier, does the administrative signing of and memorialization of documents like minutes and grants. The safety officer is a position that was created by our risk carrier, SDRMA, and other insurance agencies do this, and some agencies just carry this position on their own accord. And that is somebody who kind of keeps an eye out for, we used to have forms that the safety officer would fill out. We got rid of that because it was the same thing every month that they kept filling out, like this tire looks low, or there's a piece of metal sticking out of the ground, and it never actually got fixed. But this, Sequoia is our safety officer now. This gives us 1 point in our discount for insurance. And over the years, different levels of that position have been effective at different levels of interest. Sequoia seems to be very interested in this, and he's been proactive in safety, especially when it comes to like speed humps and the dunes and things like that. So staff's been very impressed with that. So that's what that position does. It gets involved in that level of district business.
And John, just to add, if it's okay, when I get the disbursements or information, usually bi-monthly from Chris, I'll just kind of take a look at those and pick 2 or 3 that I ask for, either, to look at the invoice, maybe to see the copy of the receipt from, a reimbursement from one of the, employees, and just kind of, just kind of that, spot check some of the checks that are dispersed, and just ask Chris for clarification on any of the amounts or anything like that. So that's sort of how we've been doing it. I know him and I just picked, we're gonna set up a couple times where I'm gonna be coming in through the end of March. So if that, I was anticipating staying on this, but I'm happy to consider, if someone really has interest or desire to involve themselves more, to take a look at that. Also, I think we do this yearly, and so we could address it in a year as well. But that's basically, some of what I do for the finance officer.
Okay.
Thank you for those descriptions. Appreciate it. So I guess in terms of, does anyone want to nominate themselves or someone else for another position? So, and maybe we could just kind of do a straw vote on president for me maintaining that role. Just a yes or no from the board members on that. Informally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Okay. Great, thank you very much. And so, we can so mark that down for that decision. So is there anyone else who wants to volunteer or nominate someone for another position?
I'd nominate Danielle to the finance officer position.
I'll
Right, we don't have
concur
to
with that.
second. Okay, yeah, because we're, but yeah, I think all those, if you're in favor of that, say yes, and we'll just do this informal straw vote to get through them. And then if you're opposed, say no.
Yes.
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 Yes, okay. All right, Danielle, it is on the finance officer. I'll Sequoia to continue in the role as safety officer with kudos from staff and that it's been working well in the initiative you've taken in that position. Let's throw that nomination out there. If you're in favor of that, please say yes.
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 Yes. Okay, great. All right, so keep Sequoia in there. So we have the vice president and the secretary, and Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe you could hold more than one position if you're motivated. So, there's that. But so we have vice president and secretary remaining.
I'd be happy to do vice president again.
Okay. All those in favor of John remaining as vice president, please.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, great.
So I'll take secretary.
Okay, yeah. All right, well, I appreciate your volunteering on that position. And, are these, if the responsibility is onerous, is this something we could bring back at any time, Chris?
Yeah, at any point, the board can reconvene this item, and if somebody resigns or just doesn't want to do it anymore, we can talk about it again at any time.
Okay.
How do I find out when you needed me to review a document? I mean, how does that work?
I would normally just send an email, or I could text you, or.
Oh, okay. Yeah, either way. Okay.
Yeah, there was a lot of
Curious.
activity over the last couple of years. I think that a lot of that's died off, but we are just starting to get into construction mode with some grants. So there might be more activity heading your way with that.
Okay. The only thing, the one position I would like is to be the water department's representative.
Yeah, I think, I've been the representative since February of 2021. I'm happy to continue that role and also interested in it. But I also don't want to damper any enthusiasm to participate in our responsibilities that we have. So I think, with that, I've said, if the board agrees, I could move into the position of alternate for the water task force. And then Tracy, you and I can work together based on availability if meetings come up and that type of thing, as far as who could attend on behalf of this district.
Okay, thank you. How do you know when the meetings are? Can you go to their board meetings? I mean, I understand that, the way Chris explained it, it's when they really have policy meetings when, I don't know, when something is going on that they really need. It's going to change maybe the pay rate or.
Something like
Chris,
a contract rate, those types of things would normally just come through the board in the normal mode. Would convene the water task force, like when the water rights are about to expire and they want to ask all the agencies at once with all the electeds, what should we do? Should we sell, export water, or just give up our rights, transfer water? Some pretty big things that staff doesn't want to.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I understand what they are and what they're. So you find out first, Chris, and then you let us know?
Yeah, I'll actually be meeting with Humboldt Bay tomorrow, and we'll see if they have anything that might be coming on the horizon. They'll give us a couple of months of warning, like we might have to convene the task force, so I can give you guys a heads up when things are heading your way with that.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, in the last 2 years, I have not attended any meetings, and could be COVID related or not. So I don't think it's from at least my experience, not cumbersome position to hold. But
so it sounded like you were happy filling that role again, but you're okay with passing it along, or did you want to have more discussion on that at all? Or
Yeah, I think so. To otherwise, to avoid essentially an awkward vote and back and forth about it, I'm happy to slide into the alternate position. And I think, really as meetings come up or, we can discuss who's available to attend. And also whether it's the water board or the REDEC, representative. I mean, that's the person who's going in our place as the board. As comments or as we want to participate, it's important to connect with a representative who can carry forward perhaps what other comments we may have as a board in those situations. So yeah, I think it'd be totally fine with being the alternate. And like I said, I don't want to dampen any excitement on participation. So we really appreciate that, your willingness to do that, Tracy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So with that said, I guess I'll do the informal vote on Tracy for the representative for Humboldt Bay Water Task Force and me as the alternative. Is everybody comfortable with that? Informal, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you. And I will take a step back just to confirm. Well, I guess I'll, with the motion maker, we can be clear in the motion on what the positions are. So with that, going to the REDEC representative, Danielle has been filling that role. And I think she's doing a great job, and I would support her continuing in that role. It would be great to have a representative or an alternate should she not be able to make it. So is there anyone willing to nominate themselves to be the alternate? Seeing none, I'll just throw my name in the ring there for the alternate for that. Totally fine. And if there are months you're unable to make it, Danielle, I'd be happy to go in your place.
Thank you. I think Chris has gone in the past.
Sure.
Stuff come up, but I appreciate having an alternate officially.
Yeah, definitely. I think that'll be good because it's good to where we are wanted to be present at these other community meetings. All right, well, that sounds good. Other appointments as listed, Danielle and I have served as the personnel committee that we have worked, we did work last year regarding contract negotiation and recommendations from the board for the general manager position. I see that continuing into the second quarter of this year, just on the goals and objectives and working on that part of it together. So I'm happy to continue in that capacity as well.
Same.
Great, thank you. And are there any optional appointments? Whatever that might be, Chris.
I left that one open in case anybody wanted to create another committee.
Well, anyone want to create any other optional appointments?
Do we have a representative that goes to the PCC regularly?
I go to pretty much
You do,
all of those
okay.
meetings. I think it would be really great though to have any two board members, by the way, can go to those at any time. You don't necessarily need to be on a committee to do that.
Okay.
What does that acronym stand for?
The Peninsula Community Collaborative.
Oh, okay.
And that is RCAA who puts those meetings on, is that correct?
That's correct.
Right, and it's just ongoings and generally for the peninsula area and coordination.
Hi, Carol. Carol wants to say something here.
Yeah, sure.
I'll just chime in. It's really, I was just a resident. It's supported by the RCAA staff to help convene them. It really is for community members all throughout the peninsula. And right now, the RCA has some funding through that beautification grant to do them at least quarterly. And so far we're still doing them monthly, but it could be something that the group wants to look into in the future to see if there's other funding to keep it going, if there's enough of a desire and need. But for now, it does have some staff support from RCAA, but really trying to keep it resident directed.
Okay, great. If that's something with the board, I think wish to like Chris said, 2 of us could go at any time and report back, or, we could have them here to report. We could also be invited by them if they need us for something specifically for meetings. Is there will of the board to have a designee or an alternative to go to the meeting, or would you like to leave it more informal?
I'm fine with informal.
Yeah, I would like to say that I would be happy to attend any time that it was, if there was like a specific reason where it was, my presence would be beneficial. In terms of committing to additional monthly meetings, I have a fair bit on my plate these days, but it definitely, if there was ever something specific, I'd be very happy to go.
Go ahead, Carol.
Can I chime in about a new meeting that just got scheduled? So they'll be sending out announcements to everybody who's on our email list. I really encourage you all to get on our email list. If you want, you can email me. But the Core Hub, which is convened by Humboldt Area Foundation, has been working on trying to get more community involvement in offshore wind development. But now we're also looking at community involvement in trying to advocate for community benefits for the onshore piece of that, the development of the harbor. And so next week, the PCC has a special meeting that'll be set up at the Humboldt Coastal Nature Center at 5 p.m. At the Nature Center with Crowley, who are the developers that the Harbor District has an exclusive right to negotiate with. So it'll be an opportunity to meet these developers, hear their commitment to working with the community, what their philosophy is. It'll also be an opportunity for community members to ask questions, share what things are important to them. And I think there's so much happening on the peninsula. I highly encourage everybody to at least stay on the email list, and as many folks as can come to those meetings, I would. This is sort of something that just came up. That'll be on, like I said, Tuesday. Believe it or not, Monday next week, we're actually having another subcommittee called Manila Moves that's going to look at infrastructure improvements to make a safer, more walkable community, which could link directly to the kind of community benefits we may want to get a developer like Crowley to support. So a lot is happening. The next general meeting will be in person, and in general, we have been meeting monthly, and the next one is going to be on February 13th, and it'll actually be down at the Humboldt Bay Social Club, which is kind of fun to do. So they're really the happening place. So I encourage, at whatever level is most comfortable to you, to participate.
Tuesday.
Great. Thank you for the update. I appreciate that and the information.
Where was it going to be held again on Tuesday?
5 p.m. at the Nature Center.
The
Humboldt
Nature
Coastal
Center, the Humboldt Coastal
Yeah.
Nature Center, which is off of Stamps Lane. And that'll be Tuesday at 5 o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
So I may, and I think, we could get clarification also just on the, for the ability, whether with the with our residents hat on to attend functions where our business is not discussed. We may not need a notice and, violate Brown Act on that. But I think if informally, you do choose to sign up for the emails, and maybe could check in with Chris, just say, hey, I'm going to attend, and you can kind of keep track of us as necessary. Maybe that's the way to move forward with this, is still keeping it informal. And
there may be a point at which you may want to send a board representative to bring forward, and I don't know, Chris, if you may want to attend this meeting, if there's any issues with infrastructure improvements that could be needed with the water district, with the water, with all this new development happening. So keeping in the loop, and I'm sure Chris can keep everybody informed that way.
Yeah, that would be great. And I think that, the general manager's report would be a good place to memorialize, that outcome of the meetings that you attend, Chris. Okay, that sounds good. Thank you, everybody, for getting through the annual organization and selection of officers. And I don't know if this is backwards in order. Also, part of the title of this agenda item was the welcoming of Tracy. And so I do want to not let that slide by and welcome her, and glad you're here to participate. And hopefully this meeting is not too painful for you.
No, I appreciate it.
Always, you know, I definitely enjoyed working with Dave on the board, and it is also great to have new people join us. So appreciate your willingness to participate with this board.
No, I appreciate taking the time to go through all the positions and what everyone does. And yeah, it's nice to learn that.
Yeah, it was really helpful, and I think a good reminder for us as well. With that said, Chris, do you think, so do you want to read through then who you think our appointments are, and then we can make a motion from there?
Yes, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Pardon my papers. We have a nomination for Megan Ryan for president with a straw vote of 4-0. John Broderick said he's happy to remain vice president, and that was a straw vote of 4-0. And John Broderick nominated Danielle for the finance officer, same. Tracy Woods volunteered to be the secretary, and the safety officer was volunteered by Sequoia, which was actually nominated by Megan with a straw vote of 4-0. Tracy was the water task force representative with Megan as the alternative, and Danielle Muniz remains the representative for REDAC, and the alternate is Megan Ryan.
Thank
I
you.
would make a motion to accept the nominations and positions for officers for the coming year, as
I'll
presented by
second.
Chris.
I'll second that motion.
And all those in favor say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. So thank you, everybody, for going through that. I think that is clear on how we're moving forward for this year. And so that was item number 5. Moving on to item number 6, the consent calendar. These, the consent calendar contains regular business items for the district. Typically, the items on the consent calendar are approved in one motion. I will poll the audience and the board members to see if they would like a discussion on any of the items on consent. If there's an item that is pulled, we will talk about that individually. If nothing is pulled from the consent, we'll be able to approve the consent calendar in one motion. With that said, item 6A is draft minutes of November 15th, 2022. Was there any members of the board or public that would like to discuss the draft minutes? Seeing none, the draft minutes for November 15th, 2022 will remain on consent. For number 6B, received disbursements November 5th, 2022 to December 15th, 2022. Are there any members of the board or members of the public who would like to talk about item 6B regarding the disbursements? Seeing none, item 6B will remain on consent. And then the consent calendar, item C, prepaid connection fee refund for assessor parcel number 400-152-002 and the amount of $2,055. Is there anyone here that would, any board members or member of the public that would like this pulled for a separate discussion?
I would.
Okay, great, thank you. And we will do that. So the items remaining on consent are items A and B. So I'd be looking for a motion from the board on approval of consent calendar items A and B.
I'll make a motion to approve consent calendar items A and B.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0 for approval of item A and B. So with that, we'll, why don't we go to item C, prepaid connection fee refund for APN 400 -152-002 and the amount of $2,055. So I'm gonna go to Chris to hear about that.
Can you all see this on your screen?
Mhm.
This is the a list of prepaid connections. It used to be very populated with upwards of $200,000 worth of prepaid connections to the system with some installation fees. And over the years, we've gradually had people ask for, they either realize these connections by installing a system, or they get a refund. So we're down to $26,155. This is a liability. You'll see this in the audit as a long-term liability. And I had an email request from, it's Michael Fennell, for this APN to have this money refunded because he figured it was just sitting in our bank and he wanted to get that back. So that's what this is for. We get about one or two of these every couple of years or so. It's pretty rare. In a long-term resolution of this, it would be good to have everybody either realize these connections or get rid of them so it's off of our books. There is one, just to bring your attention to, that has already been realized. I believe it's this very top one. So we're going to be moving those in our books. But otherwise, this would be a lowering of this liability by $2,055, and we would issue a check if it's approved, obviously, and then get reimbursed from the county because that's where this cash is.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions for Chris on this item?
I thank you for explaining that, because yeah, I haven't had one in the, oh, sorry, my dogs might start barking. Hey, getting someone coming up, sorry. Aries. So they happen every couple of years. And just to be clear, this is for a connection that was bought in anticipation of building a structure or something, or building a connection that has never happened for sure. And so then we would refund the connection deposit.
Correct. In March of 2005, the board raised the connection fees from what you'll see here of $825 and $900. Those went up to around $6,000 each, and it created a tremendous flurry of activity of people buying these back then. And this is one of those. Since that time, it was lowered and then raised back up. So it's become a commodity to a degree. So today, this connection is worth $6,000, or but we're going to give it back to him for $2,000 actually. In fact, it's only $825 and $900, and the other money is installation fees, which I would have never wanted to collect in the first place because those are inflationary victims, if you will. So when somebody does want to, let me circle back and answer your question directly. If there's an empty parcel across the street, this person could buy that and then connect to the system for free with this, other than the cost of the contractor and the tank and all of that and permitting. This gives them the right to connect. So it's a capacity charge. And so this would be eliminated from his list of properties that would be able to connect. Yes.
I see. And do we have a finite amount of those sitting that we have to issue, where this would then give us, an additional one for future development? Or
that's a great question. No, but generally there's about an 80% rule to where if we ran up to about 80% capacity, we would have to have a moratorium on new issuances of these capacity connections. Today, this list is somewhat guaranteed to these 8-10 people or whatever they are. And we definitely have the capacity for that. So this doesn't necessarily affect our capacity.
Okay. And then has this been issued currently? Because I don't remember seeing it on the disbursement.
No.
Okay. So once we approve it, he'll get his money.
Yeah, we haven't really decided whether we would issue a warrant directly from the county, which would be the easiest way to do it. And I would like to try that to see how the new county auditor is performing. Otherwise, if the guy needs the money desperately, we'll just issue a check from our checking and you'll see it in that register, and then we'll just get reimbursed through the county. It's a little easier for us just to issue a check and then get reimbursed from the county because they trust us more than they trust us issuing a check to an individual. That's where the other auditor controller had a lot of details required of agencies. So that's how it'll probably show up in a disbursement.
Okay, well, I thank you for the background. Yeah, I would move to approve item C on the well, no, I guess if anyone else doesn't have any questions or concerns, I would make that motion.
Are there any other board members that have any questions on this item for Chris? Seeing none, I will also open it to public comment. Are there any members of the public who are here that would like to, or that have comments regarding the refund of this deposit? Seeing one, Mario, I would go to you, and not, even though you said Brianna.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I should have changed.
It's all good. Go ahead.
It's going well. Thanks. Thanks for giving me a chance to ask a question. Is there an entitlement that is part of the documentation of this connection? And in the refund, is that, from what it sounds like, there's an entitlement that is no longer honored. So once the check is cut, then to connect that parcel would require a new application to the district, and current whatever board approved fees would be applicable, and just looking for confirmation of that.
That's exactly right. Getting a refund to this resets the clock and you'd have to pay today's current fee.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the board for further deliberation or a motion on the refund item. Oh yeah, go ahead, Danielle. Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve item C on the consent calendar.
Thank you.
Second that.
Thank you very much. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everybody. And moving on in the agenda to agenda item number 7, which is the action items. There are 3 action items for consideration at tonight's meeting. So 7A, the authorization for Manila CSD application for additional speed humps on Peninsula Drive. And I'll go to Chris for a summary on this item.
Okay, let me make sure that I'm working here. Yes, I got a call today actually from Mike Wilson saying, have I talked to Public Works at the county about this? What are you doing? And I reiterated, yes, I've been trying to get a hold of Public Works. They said they were going to do a survey over by Mario's house actually to see what kind of speeds we're seeing over there. So there's still a lot of work that staff would need to do procedurally if the board approves us applying for funding tonight, because if we go for Measure Z funding, we're asking the county to fund their own project. So there's a little bit of a circle there, and it's a bit procedurally cumbersome today, but we did want to keep it flexible enough to get funding from wherever we could, because there's a lot of support from residents on Peninsula to add some speed humps. So if we go by the guidelines, it's about adding 4 or 5 more speed humps, and my preliminary budget was close to $40,000 for that. So what I was looking for tonight, and let me back up a little bit. The board has previously supported additional speed humps with letters to the County Board of Supervisors. This is a little bit of a step further in that direction of letting the district become an applicant for funding to really kind of kick this in the pants and get money to actually do it. The district doesn't necessarily have the wherewithal to manage the project or get involved in contracting and things like that, or the engineering of the road, because it's the county's road and county engineering would be taking care of that. So there's a little bit more work that the district would need to do in order to get it off of our table. But tonight's approval of seeking funding at least gets the board acknowledging that staff is working on this, because it's not necessarily part of our powers. So that's what this is for tonight. I hope that, I'm sorry.
Oh, I have a question. Is more or less a speed hump is road work,
That's
correct? Yeah, but now that's out of the jurisdiction or not responsibility of the district. So I'm having a little problem. Why is this even being spoken about?
Yeah, I brought this to the board because you're correct. We don't have road powers per se. And even if we did, this is actually a county road and we'd be needing an encroachment permit to do any work on it. And I brought this to our attorney briefly several months ago, asking him about our involvement in road work like this. And he said if it doesn't have a benefit to the water and wastewater powers of the district, then it really isn't our purview. So specific to the reason why it's even on the agenda is because it is not within our authority to fund a speed hump or to actually do work in the road. So what this is asking for is the board of directors, because we've supported the concept of these additional speed humps with just support letters, would the board be also willing to support staff spending some time on helping create an application for funding through Measure Z and working with the county to see what it takes to get this actually completed through county resources?
Now, what is Measure Z funding?
When or what?
What does it fund? I
Measure
mean, I
Z-
know you're going to apply it to the speed hump or humps, but does it apply to the potholes, crosswalks? I mean, other road maintenance, or are you specifying it just for?
This effort is specifying just for speed humps, and I would say it probably would fit for crosswalks and maybe not for potholes unless they became a danger. But Measure Z is for safety. It buys like a lot of fire trucks and things like that. So it's not necessarily a bad fit. I think potholes might be a bit of a. I know exactly where you're kind of going with this. I think because a lot of money could be spent right there on Victor Boulevard in particular. There's a terrible problem with Victor, and that's a county road too. So I
In
do
the
believe.
park safety, my problem here is that I don't see personally that much of a problem there on Peninsula compared to crossing the Highway 255, the store in the park. I mean, I see that as dangerous. I mean, especially there's one woman who once a week does her laundry and has to go up and down with a cart. I see her having to push it, over to the grass when cars come and things. So I just don't see it in the purview or the responsibility of the district. So I'm just a little confused on why this couldn't have been redirected to the county office.
I think you're right on with that. And that's a great point you're making because it isn't within the district's. scope
Right,
of
it's a
authority.
latent power. You could, I mean, if you want to bring that up, and then we could do roads and things like.
Yeah, being directly involved, it would be something we would look at opening a latent power. This is kind of even a little bit one step removed from that. I think it's just going, hey, board, are you okay with staff helping getting this kind of kicking the county in the butt a little bit to see if they're interested in pursuing this further. And if it takes the district to write an application and funds would flow through the district in that sense, from a different funder like Humboldt Area Foundation or somebody like that, it still has to be a county project.
Oh, yeah, I understand that. I'm just,
Well, go
I'm
ahead.
seeing it more as not in the purview of the district. That's all if you want road maintenance or road work, then we should go get that power.
Right.
Thank you for your comments, Tracy. What I would suggest, if there are board members who have questions for Chris on this item, that please ask Chris your questions right now. We're then going to go to public comment, and we're going to hear from the public. And I would like to note that I did, receive, and the board has received in the packet the emails from the community members regarding this item. And then I think once public comment is closed, we can come back to the board for deliberation between board members and where we want to go with this. So if we just stick to right now questions for Chris on this item for clarification, that would be helpful before we open public comment. Does anyone have any questions for Chris? Go ahead, Danielle.
Chris, just an estimate, how many hours or what kind of time would you need to allocate to seeing an application like this through? And what would be put on the wayside as if you were directed to take this on, or any other employee directed to take this on? And then has anyone approached the PCC about securing funding? Because I think that started through the healthy building, the community building initiative, or healthy communities or something like that. So if you know of any input that they've had into trying to get Caltrans to move on this.
Yeah, the Manila Moves subgroup of, I think would be a good fit too, to do some of this legwork. Specifically, I've spent already maybe 2 hours on it, and it might spend another 6 total, I would think. And my goal here with that time would be to get some framework to provide to the county so that they could take it and go with it from there, and not have the district be that much involved in it. Other than that, it is of note to, our strategic plan does include some traffic safety issues. So this might be a little bit getting pretty close to directly involved in traffic safety, but that's something that isn't necessarily outside of what the board was interested in doing. But so yeah, to answer your question, it probably a day's worth of work or so.
Does anyone have any other questions for Chris?
I do. Where it says several installations, and I know we've talked about one possibly by Orange there. Where would the other possible locations for speed bumps be?
This first came up as just one additional hump at Orange, and then we had the county come out and look at that. It was Steve Finch and his helper, and they were going to do a survey and put some kind of device down there to measure traffic. When I looked into the policy and looked into the funding, it seemed like the guidelines for installing these humps were every 400 to 600 feet or something like that. So I did Google Earth, and I just threw 5 on there to make it come up to a bigger figure that made sense to apply for, which is that $38,000. So that's how I've arrived at that. There's one kind of by Sequoia's house. There's the one that's existing heading south at the community center, one at Orange, and then a couple more every 500 feet or so. So I just kind of went overboard with it and thought we could scale back if the Measure Z funding didn't want to cover that much. If the board did move forward tonight with this, first thing I would be doing is getting a hold of County Public Works and the subcommittee for Measure Z funding and asking what procedural anomalies am I creating here by having our district do this? So it could come back with more detail down the road, but it just was a very popular thing amongst the community of the concept of having these installed, because there's been a couple of pretty bad accidents right there on the way to the school recently. And this notwithstanding the fact that the other side of the community also has traffic issues too, and maybe we can look at those as well. But I also appreciate the board members wanting to make sure we stick within our scope and not let anything else that we're tasked with doing get neglected.
Thank you, Chris. Any other additional questions for Chris?
Who put in the first speed bump, or the only one that's currently by the school?
The Peninsula Community Collaborative had that installed.
Okay. It is quite a process to get a speed bump put in. You do understand that. It's not, I mean, I guess if we're putting it back onto the county, then I just kind of see a mismatch here of who's going to take on the responsibility. If we're
I don't disagree with you at all. I think that once we get the ball rolling, if the county agrees that these would be a good idea and they would fund it through Measure Z or any other way, then they would absolutely handle it. And there's the RTAP program that RCAA also used, which had the county match their existing funds that paid for the county portion of it with signage and striping and the engineering part of it. So this is a little bit of a step past that with having them fund the whole thing. Because the district can't fund $1 of it. And it is pretty involved.
Right.
The speed table that exists is a little bit larger than what I think that was going to be there. But again, staff, we limited our meeting with just Public Works. It was Sequoia was with me, and we met with County Public Works, and they thought it would be a good idea to have a couple of them. So that's where we ended our meeting with them.
Thank you, Chris. With that, I'll open public comment at this time and ask if there are any members of the public in attendance at the meeting who would like to speak on this item. Please raise your hand. And Carol, go to you first.
I'll just make 2 comments. One, because it came up about the Peninsula Community Collaborative. RCAA had funding through a Healthy Communities grant previously to make, safety improvements, and was able to go through that process. And currently our beautification grant doesn't really cover things like speed humps. We could do some work on that. So just to answer that question, it might be, RCA has pursued different funding in the past, but that's possible if there's some funding to help support staff time to do all the things, that Tracy pointed out. It is a little cumbersome. So I will say that we could do that. As Chris pointed out, we are having a Manila Moves meeting, and we will just start the process of talking about what projects we may want to work on. And that could be a place to kind of solidify community involvement in making that happen. And lastly, this is with my resident cap on, not RCAA. I have always wondered, and we don't need to answer this tonight, what the pros and cons would be of the district getting road powers, living on Victor over here. And yeah, I'd be interested in hearing about that at another meeting. Just so there we go. I'm done.
Thank you very much for your comments. I appreciate it. Mario, go to you next.
Thanks. A couple of questions and a request for clarification, I suppose. The community center, I believe that's an asset under the control of MCSD. And currently that's leased to Redwood Community or Redwood Montessori School, which is an elementary school that goes up through middle school age, and my kids go there, but a lot of other kids do too. And if there's an opportunity for making improvements for safety for kids, and even if my kids weren't part of it, I would elect and hope that our board would be supportive of endeavoring to support the community children that live here and the children that go to school, at a school which is a tenant of the Manila Community CSD. And I'm not sure if there's some liability issues there about safety and ownership of the property and the tenancy which occupies that facility, but that may be something to consider. A question for any role that the Manila CSD played in the previous speed hump. I know that it was spearheaded by the PCC and funded through Redwood Community Action Agency through the grant. Was there a role? If someone could speak to that, that would be great.
The district.
And one more question a conceptual question, and probably highlights my lack of participation here, is what is the bigger question in the role of MCSD in our community? We don't have a board, so things that happen in our community, does it have to go all the way to the Board of Supervisors to resolve? Or is it lean on the people that live here and organizing? I don't know if you want to kick that around at all, but those are my questions.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments and questions on this item. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment time. And Chris, of the comments, would you like to address any of them?
I'm sure I could tell the district didn't really have anything to do with the last speed table as far as the creation of it in that regard. And let me think about how I answer this one. The board, as far as the community goes, is charged with making sure that the water, wastewater, and parks and recreation are governed appropriately. And also part of our mission statement is being the voice of the community to larger agencies, so we can kick things upstream to the Board of Supervisors as needed when it's their responsibility or their purview to act on something that's bothering us. So we are kind of the only board in town for that. And we do try to limit scope creep and mission creep and getting involved in things that really aren't part of our power. So this is one of those items that's kind of on the borderline of that. So I hope that kind of answered what Mario had asked.
Thank you. Any board further discussion from board members on this item? Sequoia?
I think the thing that Mario brought up was interesting about that community center is the property of the district, as well as the Dunes recreation area, as well as the RV park that existed for quite a long duration. So there has been a lot of activity in the district that isn't necessarily directly involved with just the water and sewer. And I think the last thing Chris said was about us, it being our responsibility to pass things along to the appropriate agencies. To me, this would fit under that role. It's something that we've had I think this is the most members of our community that have written letters and been pushing for something specific as long as I've been on the board. I do understand that there's a concern of, if we take this on, then it sets a precedent that any road situation that comes up, we're suddenly having to take on that responsibility, which could be challenging because I've already personally put in quite a bit of time on this. That being said, it is a volunteer, on my part, it's been a volunteer labor for the work I've done. I'm wondering about if in our pursuit of funding, there was a reimbursement to the district for district time being used to pursue the project. I know that, Chris, you've looked at taking on additional work that isn't necessarily directly related to our district, just for the opportunity of generating greater revenue for the district. I wonder if that could be, the funding could include compensation for us doing work that's outside of our specific scope. I do think that with this being, like Mario was saying, I mean, sure that technically we have a very limited amount that we're supposed to be involved in, but the district does get involved in a lot more because we are the only real governing body in this area. And when you have, a dozen residents who are worried about the safety of their children going to a building that we own on a street with no sidewalks, where people speed constantly, it's one of those things that it might not technically be the easiest thing to fit into the box of exactly what the outline of our duties are, but it seems like it's something that we should be able to sneak in there in a way that is protects us from liability, but also does what the right thing for the community is. So that's my thought on this.
Thank you, Sequoia. Anyone else have any discussion items related to this item? I have a few comments, and just looking backward, that I think this is in that vein of forwarding community concerns to the right people. I think other items have come before us where we've been willing to at least do that much, and we have voiced support of the speed humps, generally speaking, in the past. I do think this is to say the next level of that. In regard to, say, preparing a grant application, I see the district with the school as a stakeholder among many stakeholders along the road that would where the speed hump would benefit the stakeholders. The district does do grant management for grants for the district that are related to drainage improvements or wastewater improvements, water, so, and those are, management of those grants are directly related to the services that we provide. I think that in this case, the tricky part is who really is in charge of maintaining the roads, which is not the district. It is the county public works, and it is a county maintained road. That wouldn't preclude, again, Chris alluded to it, getting an encroachment permit for some improvements, but ultimately I think it's worth at least exploring or asking questions that Chris alluded to those at County Public Works and that are in charge of Measure Z funding to see how does this move forward in the most cost-effective way for all stakeholders involved. And if it's not likely, someone else managing the grant or the county taking it on themselves is probably the answer here, I think, but we don't know and we don't have that information in front of us. But, I would encourage to have those additional conversations directly with Public Works and the Measure Z funding committee to see what the options are as far as applying for the grant. Is an application necessary? Can the county request those funds are just available without an application? It's their money, getting some more information on just the most cost-effective way to move forward and who really is best to manage the grant. And I think that would make it easier on our end than like go apply for a grant that doesn't apply to us and spend 100 hours doing it. We don't want to do that and get carried away, but we also do recognize the safety concerns of the community and want to be supportive of trying to do better.
That seems like a good idea to me.
Thank you.
I agree.
More
Megan.
information.
So with that said, I typically don't throw a motion out there, but we have this motion in front of us, and I, from what the language used, Chris, I would suggest, I move to approve staff seeking additional information regarding a process to move forward with the speed humps, a grant process or collaboration. And should if the CFD would be applying, I could probably shorten this somehow, but if the CFD is going to be in a position to make an application, that comes back before us. But, and the idea of like working with other, working with the county, working with the Measure Z committee, and then on the, like a director report, you can keep us updated. If it really comes to a place where the CSD should be making the application, bring that before the board. But I think connecting people and doing the phone calls and, like you said, doing the 4 to 6 hours to support this effort, I would be in support of that and put a motion together to that effect.
Before we vote on that motion, is there an opportunity to speak?
Yeah. Well, I guess that said, so we could do so I did throw a motion. So we'd see, is there a second? And then if there's a second, then we can have a discussion on the motion before we vote.
Okay, cool.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. So we have a motion and a second, and then we'll go to discussion on the motion.
So yeah, my question, which would involve Chris, would be, because right here what I have is a application form for the Christine and Jalmer Berg Foundation. I reached out to them and there was they expressed that it was something that potentially could be funded through their organization. The application, first of all, requires a tax exemption letter, so an organization that has tax exemption. So I don't know if the district even would fit into that or how that would work. But there's a I guess if maybe one stipulation in what the the motion that was just made could be if the grant application process is carried out by volunteer hours and maybe signed off. I guess some limitation of the amount of actual staff hours that can be used, but like some amount of staff consultation or assistance just to potentially pursue funding sources. I guess what I'm getting at is the fact that if we have to come to another meeting to talk about an application, there's one right here. So I'd rather just talk about it now. And then move forward.
Well, and I think, I'd be, on the motion, to clarify on the motion that, I think say up to 8 hours to 8 hours to coordinate, whether it's with the county, Measure Z, or other potential, nonprofits that could support the stakeholders in getting this goal met, I think would be an appropriate use of that time. Should there be an item on there that, that Chris, if the district has to answer a question on it, but from what I'm hearing, that application, the district wouldn't necessarily need to make that application. Another agency would be doing it, so that really would be something we'd approve. I'm understanding.
That's what I'm wondering, Chris, because we don't have 501c3 status as a district, right?
Not specifically, but we're a super nonprofit, so we're tax exempt.
Okay.
I know if I can jump in real quick with that, I think that from what I'm hearing already, it has a really clear path for me to go to the county and get this process and the procedure to get this project lined up and what we're going to need to do. And then if Measure Z is not going to fund this, or they're going to, then we'd look at your application from these other funders. And I think that at least we'd know what path to take clearly, and then the money becomes secondary.
Cool. And you can do that within the motion that was made and seconded already?
I feel so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and to answer your question, we are definitely tax exempt.
Well, good.
Yeah, I would think that you're right. If the funding source, as we all kind of currently understand it, or the support that you're doing, if it comes down to we're going to play a big part in that effort, or we have to sign applications, we should know about it. But I think I would support in my motion staff helping to accelerate this for at least up to 8 hours to help it out as one of the stakeholders involved.
And beyond those hours, maybe or in tandem, passing along or sharing the information with the Manila Moves grassroots organization. I mean, that seems in the name alone, like this is exactly the type of thing that they could spearhead, and that could be who channels who's able to hold on to secure the funding. Even if it's Measure Z, I don't know, if that's something they could take on, because, if it is a city funds or county funds. But yeah, just that any information that comes up, or, even the sense of urgency that's been expressed by the community just gets passed on to that Manila Moves at the meeting this week. I think Carol said it was happening this week. Just seems like great timing for that. And I think once we can show or prove that our road caretaking abilities are that we excel in that, then maybe we move on to secure that additional level of work. But I know, some of the roads that we are charged with caring for now, like Lupin and Park, we don't showcase that. They could use some help, and I feel like there is time and effort that could be spent on the roads that we do maintain before we go and overreach into additional road areas. But I am happy to approve the motion with the 8 hours of fact finding, and to kind of share or work with Manila Moves in moving forward.
To me, it seems more appropriate for this issue to be directly with Manila Moves, so not with the district is my position. If you want to do roads, then Chris can get that latent power. And we can get back, the district can get back that authority. And then there would be no issue. Is my standpoint. And that's what,
And, for what it's worth, I don't want to get too far in the weeds on the, getting back the road authority and where we would go for that. That's not what was on the agenda tonight, or really it's about the speed humps and Measure Z. Appreciate the comments, absolutely, but I think we could agendize that.
Yeah, and just to clarify, at least my perspective, I personally have zero interest of the district having road authority or being in charge of road maintenance. I personally don't think this falls under road maintenance from my perspective. This is adding safety features for community members related to a property that we own. There's no talk of pothole repair, paving, road, anything like that. So I think it could be justified much more reasonably in that regard, and also could not set a chain reaction, because it would be very specific to a property we own and a safety concern that's expressed largely, as opposed to just general, someone in a different part of Manila wants their pothole fixed type thing.
I wasn't talking about potholes. Speed humps are roads. They are part of roads.
Mhm.
Chris brought up the potholes. I'm just saying, I mean, I have nothing against safety. What I'm saying is us taking this on isn't within the district's purview.
Mhm.
I see nothing wrong with spending a few hours to find the appropriate people after Chris going to talk with the county and then passing it on. I see nothing wrong with that. I think you can stretch our powers and our responsibilities, but otherwise it's not within the code for us.
Well,
Yeah, it seems like we're all in agreement. I think that we should do our responsibility of passing this along to the appropriate people, and it's just a matter of how much effort that takes, but sounds like I agree with that.
Thank you. Thank you both for your comments. I appreciate it. We have a motion on the floor in a second. Are there any questions on the motion, or are we clear on the motion? With no questions, then I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor of spending additional staff time up to 8 hours seeking more information and doing some connection with other stakeholder groups on the speed hump, essentially, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. And just a quick reminder, my clock just turned 8 o'clock, and we do stop these meetings at 8:30, and we have a number of other items to go. So should we not get through the agenda for some reason at 8:30, then an item would be continued to the next hearing date. So I just want to throw that out there, whatever it's worth, in advance. Our next business item is number 7, regarding the mural at the Manila Community Center.
Thank you very much. The mural at the community center, where RCM has their site that we lease, has you've seen it, I'm sure, an underwater seascape scene that now there's an opportunity to have that repainted. And this is going to be funded also by that funding stream that Carol had mentioned earlier from Clean California, from Caltrans, the beautification effort. And I brought this to the board because there's been some interest in the community to keep that type of theme. And the artist has expressed, I believe his name is Josh, a desire to, it's in a bad state. So the goal is to have it pressure washed and primed, and then kind of recreate that same theme, but it's going to be painted over. And then where there's some blue fields of emptiness, there's going to be some dune and native plant paintings added to that, but otherwise try to keep with the same theme. But the actual painting of the mural itself would be recreated, and that's at no cost to the district. And again, the reason I brought this to the board, there's several murals going on, and this was one of the bigger ones that had some interest, because it was never really finished. I believe Carol Anderson started this back in 2004 or so. So I'll leave it at that. If anybody had any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Does anyone have any questions for Chris on this item? John, go ahead.
If the funding for it falls through, or we don't get that funding, would the district basically be on the hook for the mural?
No, this has already been allocated in a mural fund from our CAA from the Clean California grant. So I believe this funding has already exists. So it's not going to be a district expense.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions for Chris on this item? Seeing none, I will open this item up for public comment. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on the consideration of repainting the mural at the community center? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment on this item and bring it back to the board for deliberation or a motion.
I've had a few community members reach out to me who were involved with the initial mural, and you know, just a soft spot in their heart. They ran the, you know, recreation and programming, Selena and Bev Prosser, and they were hoping or wondering if we could consider some sort of commemorative plaque that within this funding that would pay honor or tribute to the resource kids that helped, the school kids that are helping now, and some of the artists that, you know, if we could just do something that reflects something like that once it's completed. And I would like that or support that, you know, as years go by, we could add to it, but just something to pay tribute to Carol Anderson. I don't think she was the only artist in residency that did that, but I do know there were resource kids who helped paint it, and you know, we could pay tribute to the kids from the Montessori school that are helping this time, or something to that effect. So that was just a community request.
I will, if it pleases the board, I would be definitely willing to pass that along and ask that that be included in the approval of this evening.
Sounds good to me. I would support that also. With that, if you know, if there's no more discussion on this item, we're looking for a motion to approve restoring the mural as described above, and with the additional request regarding the plaque.
I motion we restore the mural and apply the plaque to that if possible.
Great, thank you, John. Here a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. And that was item 7B regarding consideration of repainting the mural at the community center. Item 7C is our last business item on tonight's agenda. It's consideration of expanded tidelands lease to the Humboldt Bay Oyster Company, located at assessor parcel number 400-181-006. And I'll go to Chris for a summary.
Thank you. I'll change a little bit of the wording here. It should be consideration of an additional lease, because there already is a lease that Todd Van Herp has from Humboldt Bay Oyster Company with a few acres. And what he did, this kind of came late in the day, that he wanted to also lease an 8.5 or so acre part of the same parcel across from the slough there. So I told him I'd bring it to the board to get a preliminary type of authorization that simply gave him confidence to press forward with expending his own funds and getting a formal survey done and a draft lease. So just if tonight's approval by the board is positive, I'll share that with Todd, and then he can prepare a draft lease with the formal survey that will come back to the board for final adoption, perhaps next month. Or after that, depending on how long it takes him to get that done. Megan and I did meet today, and we talked briefly about the cost of this and perhaps looking at an escalator or why this is so cheap. And after she left, Megan, I don't know if you received it, but I found a letter from the Harbor District in 2015 that does speak of Morro Bay or other tideland leases that produce oysters, and it's not a big dollar maker for us, but I'll look at those numbers because they are from 2015 and applying some inflation to that and see if we can't crank that number up a little bit higher than $500 and see if we can get a better rate on that while the opportunity is there, and perhaps covering for inflation from the other lease that we leased to him as well. So I will bring back some draft figures to the board for next month if you guys approve in concept that this can move forward.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate the update. Yes, any questions for Chris on this item? Sequoia?
Yeah, I support what you were doing to look into obviously accounting for inflation and whatnot, because it does seem like seems like a bargain. I'm wondering, this location, is this an eyesore from any perspective? I mean, I couldn't quite tell if it's something you can see right from the 255 or if it's in any way kind of taking away from. I know that there's a environmental impact to oyster farming, so I do feel like with an environmental impact and any sort of aesthetic impact, that the cost should reflect that. If you want to comment on that a bit, Chris.
Yes, I was trying to get a GIS up here so you could see how far away this is from the shore. This is just east of the park, almost towards the center of the bay. If you guys wanted to give me a minute to get that up, give me 1 minute.
Sequoia, what you could do if you know how to go on to Humboldt County's GIS site, you can put in the parcel number and it will come up and you'll be able to see. It's off of Victor. This is mud flats you're seeing here. You're actually seeing the bay, so there's no reference really for you unless you see the whole map. And then you'll be able to see where the blue, where there's little gaps, those are the secondary channels. So sort of you see it. Yes, you can see it from the bay if you're standing on the land. At low tide, you have to know what you're looking for. The posts where they put the trays, they grow the oysters two ways, either in those baskets or in trays. And during storms and different times of the years, those get loose and they come up and people like myself get to pick them up. But if you return them, they'll give you oysters. But yeah, I agree with the environmental impacts too. Aren't very well known because it's not really studied. So perhaps we could have someone come and talk to us about it. You know, maybe someone from the Fishermen's Association. The recreational fishermen have a problem with them. They run into them. And I was wondering, with the park improvements, they were thinking of having something for kayakers. Would this, be a problem for them? Or, I had some of these same concerns, just to bring it up. I mean, one of my problems is how much is too much or how many are too many oysters for the bay. And I know that hasn't been studied. Nutrient uptake. And one of my other problems, it's just coincidental, not that I know of, but when you leased the first area, all the seagrass, just an immense amount, was put up on the shore. And the area that is like from the park up to about Melvin was coated in there. I can't say where that came from, but you can objectively point to a cause.
Yeah, if you don't mind me jumping in, I don't think it would be inappropriate for me to ask the applicant to make a presentation to the board next month and answer these questions.
Yeah, and then maybe we could have counterpoint, have someone like maybe from the Baykeepers or the Fishermen's Association. Maybe they have some talks, because this is a nursery and breeding ground.
Yes. Would you like me to, I can ask him to present if there's any other organizations you'd like me to invite.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Chris. I'd like to learn more about it.
Okay.
And I agree, it seemed to me very inexpensive. It was like, rounding about 42 a month for 10 years.
Yeah, there's a guideline that was, I think Department of Commerce gave the Harbor District, and the Harbor District forwarded it to me. And again, this is 2015, so it's kind of old. And we were not a high, there's high, medium, and low productivity, and we ended up
Yeah.
in low productivity mode. And it takes some odd years to get the shellfish started. And with that consideration, they were at $150 an acre per year or something like that. So it looked like a good deal a few years ago when we started
Yeah,
providing.
right, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe things have changed. We do have a couple of 10-year leases that we would need written notice if we wanted to open those up. But let me talk to Todd and get him here next month. I don't think there's any timeliness to this that requires us to act tonight on that. So let me get some more information for us.
Just to clarify, these would be two separate lease agreements and we wouldn't renegotiate with this individual for a singular lease. For doing
That's
that.
correct. That's correct for what tonight's item is, but the board is free to say, let's open up your existing lease. And this might be an opportunity, if he really wants it, to open that up and maybe renegotiate what the rate is. So I can also bounce that off the top, but I'll definitely have him come to the meeting and speak for himself.
Okay.
Are there any additional questions for Chris? Seeing none, I will open public comment for consideration of expanded tidelands to lease to the Humboldt Bay Oyster Company located at APN 400-181-006. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Please raise your hand. And Mario, go ahead. You're on mute. Yeah.
Question about jurisdictional responsibility and the role of MCSD. How this is property owned by the CSD, and that's why it's germane to the agency. Just a little bit of articulation about how it's germane, and the responsibility for permitting. Is this not the Harbor District scope for management of Humboldt Bay, or how is it something that it's permittable by the MCSD? And just a little discussion about CEQA and process would be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll be really brief with my very limited knowledge of this. It has something to do with the Harbor District used to actually manage the lease of all of the tidelands, and then something to do with state lands where they had to relinquish that type of control to the landowners, which is Manila CSD for this particular parcel. And I believe the horticulture or aquaculturists do go through the Harbor District for their permitting and whatever other hoops they have to jump through for that. So that would probably capture their CEQA needs at that level. But we're just as the landowner, they do have to go through us just to get permission to use the property. And we just so happen to own it because it's connected to the park and was part of a purchase many years ago.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll close public comment on this item and bring it back to the board for deliberation or motion. I do generally, so I'll just jump in on some of the permitting and environmental questions, and I'll say generally speaking, and then kind of the context in which I interpret this item. But Chris's synopsis of the permitting, I do think is accurate in that there are agents, we are the landowner. So it's essentially, do we have your permission to do this here? That does not negate the responsibilities of the oyster company to getting their federal, state, or other local permits that would be needed to do the project. Likely Humboldt Bay, where state lands fits in there, does the Army Corps fit in there? A biological opinion. There's a number of regulatory hoops likely they jump through to have these oyster farms. And so along the way of that process, there would be opportunities for review, public comment, if there's environmental document prepared to, review those documents. And as the property owner, we'd get noticed on anything that would go to a decision. And certainly to be extra cautious, we could, depending on, I think it'd be great to have the Humboldt Bay Oyster Company owner come talk to us and kind of the process that they go to. Out of abundance of caution, we can certainly reach out to the agencies and say, hey, make sure you let us know if anything's moving forward on this and that we're in the loop on how this goes forward. But typically as the owner, we would have to provide authorization. And so with that said, the motion in tonight's packet talks about preliminary authorization of the tideland lease for these tidelands. I would suggest a modification to that language if the board was in support of it, as to say provide preliminary support of the additional lease of the tidelands. I think, in this presentation or summary, Chris had said that there is a survey portion of this and more specific details would be included at the lease. And so I do think there's an opportunity for a draft final lease to come back before us. Should we agree to support, provide preliminary support to moving forward in this direction. So with that said, I'll just make a motion to that effect of that, I move to provide preliminary support of additional tidelands for APN 400-181-006. And just leave it at that at the APN, not discussing the cost. And then and that request that a draft final lease come before the board once the survey has been completed and after presentation by the Oyster Company.
I'll second that. Oh.
Great, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everybody. Let's see here. So with that, we've completed the business items. We'll now move on to item number 8, board initiated item. Consideration of an ad hoc committee regarding energy efficiency programs. And with that, we're at 8:19. I'll go to Chris for a summary and then I'll check in and see how we're feeling and where we're at 8:30. If we need additional time or not need to continue the item.
Yeah, I want to remind the board, we do have a pretty important presentation that was in my staff report. I shouldn't have put it at the end of the agenda for Brett and the important water system that we've got. But I'll be really quick and brief with this, that there was the Inflation Reduction Act that came through the window for us to look at, and it was the item was morphed into what I had changed it to raising awareness of energy efficiency programs for ratepayers throughout the district. And generally speaking, and if I can use what the example I had received, and I'll kick this back to you, Sequoia, in a second, was that if a bunch of residents got together and paid for solar panels from my roof, I would have them on my roof, and then the rest of the group would get the benefit of this, not necessarily me. And it's those types of energy efficiency programs that are flowing through the district and our community, and somehow the district would be part of this to help convey that information to the ratepayer. I hope I created a synopsis. Does that sound about right, Sequoia?
Yeah, I think Nancy, when we get to public comment, can speak. Nancy reached out to me and kind of raised my awareness about wanting to spread awareness about something that would directly affect our ratepayers in terms of opportunities to maximize the efficiency of their appliances and things of that nature. And I think it relates to the district because of these subsidies could potentially lower usage of water and other resources. But so I don't know how this fits in exactly with like we've talked before, in terms of it being necessarily the district's business or not. So that's kind of what the discussion would be. But I think with the ad hoc committee, it would make it a separate thing. And I don't know how much in your time would be involved, Chris, but I think Nancy can kind of give us a little more of her thoughts and how it relates to the district and the constituents here.
Thank you, Sequoia. Are there any other questions from board members for Chris on this item? Seeing none, I'll go to open the public comment. And so, yes, if you'd like to speak, raise your hand and we'll go straight to you, Nancy.
Okay, so it's kind of complex because what I am thinking an ad hoc committee could do is actually look at many things. You know, in the past, Chris and I have even talked about solar panels on the perk ponds. There's the community solar idea that would Chris was describing, where you put solar panels on a, doesn't even have to be in Manila, and residents help pay for those solar panels and get the benefit on their energy bills. But there's also originally, I was thinking of the Inflation Reduction Act and all the benefits that could come to the community in terms of, electrifying their homes and making them more energy efficient. So it's kind of like, I don't have the solution or the thing that I think should happen, but I think that it would be really useful for there to be a committee that really looks in depth at different possibilities for Manila, and then hopefully comes up with what they think is the best, the best idea, and both to benefit the district, maybe reduce the district's electric costs, or just in general be a benefit to the people of this community. And I guess I kind of, there's this chance to to take it, there's you could take advantage of some of the programs that are state run or that are federally run, and I just I want people in Manila to know about them. That's, so it's many things. And I just would love for there to be a group of people who were focused on it and came up with some ideas for our community. And I think we do have a history where we work on things like the speed bump that was part of the discussion tonight that are for the community. The safety committee that worked in the past and got some of the improvements on 255, the recreation, group years ago that brought things for our teenagers and our children. So I don't know if that's clarifies what it is for people, because it's pretty complex, but.
Thank you, Nancy. Does that conclude your comments?
Yeah, I
think
yeah.
if you have questions,
so
we can
for
come
now.
back to you. I
Yeah.
think that would be
Yeah.
great. Well, thank you very much. With that, I will just leave the public comment open for now. See if we have any direct questions that we would like Nancy to address. Are there any questions for Nancy at this time? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment, and we'll get back to you if anything comes up during our deliberations.
Okay.
So anyone like to start on this? Well, I could jump in if that helps get the discussion going. I definitely see I certainly see energy, energy independence and efficiency is very important. I do see that providing, I do think providing those services is kind of one of these items that is outside of the district. And however, although I'm not against the idea of an ad hoc committee, I would wonder if there's anyone on the board who would be in favor of inviting the Redwood Coast Energy Authority to come talk to us about residential and commercial programs that are available. I think this is the way that we could support information getting out to people from the experts in our area who really do focus on this day in and day out. And then also, I'd be interested to hear from the Redwood Coast Energy Authority. At one point, they were offering commercial business audits of their power systems. And so should that be something that they're still offering? Or we could see what the cost is of that, but they could really go through, okay, here's the district, here's what the district has, here's your current power load, here's how it's being provided, here's our way that you can improve it. Because certainly, in the pros and cons against it, right? Because solar is great, but how much battery storage do you have and can you afford it? And so I think that with the expertise that they have in kind of understanding the regulations at the federal, state, and what they do locally, in addition to the technology that's out there, and kind of get us a baseline of like, for the district, because I do think that improvements where we can be more independent and efficient and save money is really appealing. And then also at the same time providing kind of a community education. To me, starting there with the Redwood Coast Energy Authority, having them come to the meeting, do a presentation if they're willing and available to do that. And then just getting a sense from them what is available, what is out there, and then perhaps after that consider the ad hoc. So I don't want to say, in my opinion, like no ad hoc, but I think perhaps if we, rely on the professionals that do this day in and day out, and then see where we want to go with it, might be an appropriate first step. Any comments or questions on that?
To me, I said that sounds like a reasonable step to me. I would be curious, Chris, what your thoughts are in terms of if this is something that reasonably could be tied into the responsibilities of the district and whatnot, and if what Megan just brought up sounds like a good first step, what your thoughts are regarding that.
I think it's a great first step would be to invite RCEA to a board meeting. Our agency did have a business audit a few years ago, and we could probably stand to use another one, but I think it'd be great to have somebody, an authority on the subject, talk to the board.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think the audit could ultimately probably inform some type of grant application. So if there's agreement on the board at the time to try to fund improvements to be more energy efficient as the district and conducting our business, perhaps that's a route we want to consider after we have more information.
In terms of spreading awareness to residents about this IRA, I guess I'm curious if that is not something that's necessarily the district's best use of resources or responsibility. I'm not sure who it would be or who would be a good.
I'm sorry if I didn't address that with you, Sequoia. Yeah, I think we'd be more than happy to print off flyers or whatever and put them on the counter, and we can put notes on bills and definitely do some outreach directly to all the ratepayers and customers, however we can do that. If you guys just want to maybe squeeze those into what exactly you'd like to see, we can get that going. So I know we've tailed off a little bit with the RCEA not being directly related to this. Maybe they do know. We're not sure until we ask them. But yeah, I don't want to drop what you guys were trying to push forward, but the district staff at least and the counter's ready there for you guys for this. Whatever you want to do with that.
Yeah, to me that seems like it would be really beneficial to the community would be to have just basic information, because I didn't even know about this until Nancy brought it up to me, and it is something that could dramatically reduce people's bills and increase efficiency. So
and yeah, For what it's worth, the district is involved in a LIWAP program, and there was other reimbursement programs that we did for ratepayers for water issues, and some of those are related to COVID. So it's kind of still within our business stream when people come in to find this stuff.
Okay.
Uh,
I'll take that as a directive then from the board that I'll reach out and bring something back to the next agenda item with RCE AI on it. And then we'll just go ahead and move forward at a staff level with whatever pamphlets and materials you guys would like to provide to ratepayers.
I think you guys would be supportive of that and continuing the conversation when we have more information from the Energy Authority.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
Well, I'm curious too what information they do have, because what I have heard, like with the IRA, is that, you know, it's a federal program, but the money comes to the state, but the state hasn't quite figured out, you know, it hasn't figured out how it's going to get distributed and how it's going to get decided. But maybe, well, I would suspect that RCA would know more than what's out there publicly.
Yeah, I would hope that they would be, you know, if what they do know, if they're willing to share, or they do have additional information, and if there is some type of working with the state, likely there would, you know, I think perhaps be a more appropriate representative than us trying to pull something together, you know, and work with the connections and the expertise that they have. So yeah, I think it is a great topic, and definitely look forward to hearing from them. And I do appreciate Sequoia and Nancy putting this on our agenda for consideration tonight. Thank you. It is now 8:33. Typically, we would end the meeting at 8:30. And Chris indicated as a part, which is agenda item 9, essentially our last agenda item, that there's a presentation Brett has been waiting to do with us for the last 2 hours. And so I would ask if there's the will of the board to continue this meeting past our typical 8:30 deadline for 15 minutes, Brett, or do you need more than that?
I can be pretty quick. I can be pretty quick. Yeah.
You know, but we don't want, you know, want you to feel too rushed, but you know, if we could say approximately, if everyone's willing to stay approximately 15 minutes or less to get the presentation from Brett, if everyone's on board for that, I think we just keep charging through here. All right, great. I saw enough. I did confirm thumbs up from Sequoia, Danielle, John, myself, and Tracy says yes, thank you. So we'll go into the general manager report, and Chris, you can start.
There's no earthquake damage. You're up, Brett.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I'll go ahead and share my screen. So yeah, I've got a presentation of PowerPoint going here, and we'll just kind of work our way through this. Okay. Give me a thumbs up if you just see the entry screen with the project title. No.
I am seeing Chris's screen. Yes, now I'm seeing your screen.
Okay, now you're seeing my, okay, right, that's the double share of Zoom. Okay, so thanks so much for your patience and for sitting through this little presentation. I'm really excited about this. This is really big. Chris and I have been working on this project, the Manila CSD Water Infrastructure Improvement Project, since about 2017, and before that, even kind of trying to look for funding. So what we'll do is we'll go through a little bit of background and purpose of the project, go through the existing system, how the existing water system works, and some of the components of that, what the proposed project is, the funding and the cost of the project, as well as the kind of offset funding to ratepayers, and then a little bit about schedule. So things are going to start happening quickly as we move forward. It's been a lot of kind of wait around and see, and now we're moving forward. So back in maybe 2015, 2016, Chris and I were kind of thinking about different projects. We applied to the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund through the regional board for a planning study, and got funding to look at opportunities to modernize the CSD's water system, really to provide a more robust and reliable service, for decades to come. So as I said, the district applied for a grant. GHD helped kind of do that planning grant back in 2017. We wrapped up in 2018. That included, well, it was funded by the EPA and then the California Water Board's State Water Resources Control Board. It was about a $500,000 planning grant that the district got. We went through an evaluation of the existing water system. And when I'm saying water system, this is our drinking water system that comes from Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District and then comes out our taps. But evaluate the existing system, identify improvements, analyze and select alternatives. So what's kind of the best improvement? There's always multiple ways to solve problems. Look at those alternatives, the costs, what's best for Manila. We did the environmental studies. So those are the background studies looking at any sort of environmental impacts. We completed the California California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. It was a mitigated negative declaration. The board approved that. That went through. We got permits, the coastal development permits, and we prepared the encroachment permit applications for Caltrans and for the county. And those will be kind of submitted as part of the construction package. We got to 95% design plans and specifications, and then we completed a construction funding application. So that was all completed back by 2018. Submitted that for construction funding, and it looked like the district was going to have to put up a 10% grant match when it might have come through. That would have been about $350,000 for a $3.5 million grant. And I'll get into it a little later in the presentation, but the district, because of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and that money that came from the federal government through the states, they waived that matching requirement, and the water board funded this project completely 100%. And I'll get to a little bit of those details. But so looking back at the background of the water system, most of the components of the water system were built in the late 60s. So it's over 50 years old, a lot of those elements. Some of those elements are working just fine. Some of them, they were kind of beyond their useful life, or need some improvements and maintenance. But the district has been doing a great job of kind of working with this system as they go to implement improvements as they need to. Our source of water, as I said, Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District, and that comes from the Mad River. I think you're all kind of aware of that and how it comes down the pipeline, or the pipeline trail, and then comes into Manila along Lupin Drive. So, the system operations for Manila, basically, clean drinking water comes from Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District, and then the CSD stores water. We all know the big redwood water tank there at the district site. They maintain a chlorine residual in that water, so they can distribute that out, still disinfected and clean, and they distribute it to the Manila customers. So the system condition, as I said, it's over 50 years old. Repairs are not uncommon, and some facilities are maybe a little undersized, in particular, kind of thinking about the water tank. So if we look at it kind of a schematic, water comes in from Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District down Lupin Drive, and then you can see this like a valve cluster there. Water can either continue down Lupin Drive out into the distribution system. That's kind of how it's set up. Water can also come over and then get pumped or fill up the storage tank. And then in times when Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District is down for cleaning, or in the event of an earthquake that for some reason would, break a pipe, and the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District could no longer service water to us, or there was a temporary outage, I would say, then the district can use water from the storage tank and then pump that out to the residents or to the customers. But this system was put in the late 60s. There are some antiquated parts to it, and some challenges that the district kind of noted. So when we went through the kind of system evaluation throughout the distribution system, and the distribution system would be all the pipes that are in the roadways that kind of connect to our laterals at our houses and provide us water. But there are some valves that are failing or non-existent. There are some pipes that are undersized for how much water we want to distribute through them. There's in one location there's a pipe that's kind of above ground and it goes through a culvert underneath 255. Caltrans doesn't know about it. Well, they know about it, but they were like, wait, this isn't permitted. This is odd. So there are some anomalies that historically have kind of been put in, and then there are some failing pipes. There's a few connections on Lupin Drive. As the pipe comes in, they get serviced directly off the main line before it gets to the storage tank. And really what this means is that they get high pressures, they have their own pressure reducing valve, and they're not connected to the storage. So when there's an outage by Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District, those folks would be out of water. And then the tank is a little undersized. If we think about in emergencies, we want to have enough for maybe 3, 5, 7 days for the community to have water while maybe other systems are down. So the tank we could have a little more storage. There are very old control systems. You could see that photo on the right. We're now in a digital age, but those were controls. And then there are some older pumps. There isn't backup power to, in a power outage to then distribute that water. So, a handful of things there, kind of some failed or inadequate piping and valves and some configurations that were appropriate in the late 60s that aren't now kind of how the water is structured. The chlorine monitoring and injection is all manual right now. And usually that's treated in more of an automated way. There's an aging pressure system. The district, I don't know if you folks remember it, but there was an emergency project that took place to kind of deal with this pressure system because it was kind of on the brink of failing. So the district installs some new valves in Lupin to kind of bypass this system and buy some time. And then, there's some security fencing around there that's kind of inadequate and aging. So knowing those kind of deficiencies of the system, we looked at project improvements, which include a new water storage tank, new pumping and disinfection systems, and replacing select distribution piping and appurtenances. So this is just kind of a schematic at the district site. What we're going to do is put in a new controls building kind of along the fence line, just about where the existing water tank is. Put in a new water tank just next to that, kind of on the corner of the property. I'll show you an example of that. Put in a new pipe that goes back up Lupin Drive to connect those customers who are not connected to the storage tank, so that the whole community can receive water in the event of an emergency, and we're cut off from Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District, and some new fencing around the district office. So we looked at several different types of tanks. As you all know, it's a redwood redwood tank that we have right now. Those don't exist anymore, and no one can work on those. If it were to start to fail, it'd be a big challenge. So we looked at several different types of water storage tanks, and where we landed was a glass fused to steel bolted storage tank. The up at Sherry Heights Casino, there is one of these. Given our coastal environment, I don't know if you've gone down on the southern peninsula, but there are some bolted steel tanks that are fairly unsightly with all of the rust, and so we went through an alternatives analysis evaluating that concrete tanks and glass fused to steel. So we're going to go with glass fused to steel and increase it by about 50% in size. So from 100,000 gallons to 150,000 gallons. Also implementing new chlorination control and pumping. So there'll be a new pump house, and a lot of things that can be automated with, controls and new valves, just making it a lot easier to kind of operate the system. And then kind of throughout the community in the distribution system, really what we're doing through the community is within existing valve boxes is where we're replacing valves. That's kind of on Orange Drive, on Shell Drive, on Dean, kind of wherever you see these blue or yellow circles. Those are indications of valve clusters, and we'll just do new valves, make those easy to operate. And then a new pipe section on Peninsula Drive, just to make it a circuit, make it easier to isolate areas of the system when there are breaks or anything happens. And then the pipe that I was talking about that kind of goes through like a drainage ditch and then through a culvert under 255 and then kind of comes out your Carlson Drive. We're going to abandon that and then put in a new one that is over by Smeagol Road, which is kind of like Carlson Road, some folks call it that, but it will go underneath 255. So that's going to be directionally drilled underneath 255 to really serve the folks over at Carlson Drive and then off on Stamps Lane. But just a new connection there. So really the system is simple, it's straightforward. We're just improving upon it in the sense of, kind of making replacements. I'll pause there on components if anybody has any questions or comments.
Oh, is what Caltrans been helping you with? They're on Dean and Peninsula. Caltrans in 255 they've been out there last week, but they were out there all day today.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
No, this Caltrans has not been assisting with this. We're getting an encroachment permit, but none of this has started. So I'll talk a little bit about schedule and where we're going from here. But yeah, that would be a separate project. I'm not sure what they're working on. All right. Well, I'll just keep going through. Or Danielle, did you have a? Oh, you're muted.
Okay, sorry. The emergency project that was done outside the district, it was something like $30,000, or is there any way that we're able to, funnel that through the grant money or get any of that back as part of the project? Or
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. We'll have to look back at it if well, sorry, so we will need to look at the timing of when that was put in the grant. There are eligible reimbursement costs back to a certain date. That's usually more for like soft costs like labor. I don't know if it would cover the construction components, but we can look into that, because it's certainly, I think we were proposing to replace that valve anyway, and the district just had to act quickly. So that may or may not be eligible, but we can check and certainly wrap it in if it's eligible.
And then just for clarification, a new pump house, is that like the back half of the district office, or is the pump house closer to the dune and the tanks, like up at the up loop in?
No, it will be at the district office parcel there. It'll be a separate building, kind of where the existing tank is right now. It'll be like a concrete block building, kind of similar to the pump station or the old pump station for the wastewater, that kind of look. But that'll be where the existing tank is, and then the new tank will be next to that.
Okay, thanks.
So all on the same parcel. So the cost of the project, what the the district was awarded, they were awarded, or you all were awarded $3.5 million. So that's a little over $3 million for construction, about a little over $400,000 to finish the design and the construction management and the administration associated with the project. So this is where, you know, previously it was going to be 90% grant funding, and the district was going to come up with $350,000, going to have to implement the project. But yeah, because that Infrastructure and Jobs Act, that funding, the district was able to get 100% funding. So I did a little back calculation, you know, the other options, and, you know, kind of where the board may be interested in, you know, what are the savings to the ratepayers? Had we had to do this project and the district had to fund it, if the district took out a 30-year zero interest loan, which, you know, which are available through the regional board and through USDA, that $3.5 million over 30 years, it would basically cost each connection, assuming there's about 350 connections in Manila over 30 years, the cost per month would be about $28 per connection, or about, you know, $330 a year. But you know, with the 100% grant funding, it doesn't cost the ratepayers anything. So just, you know, something to highlight. You know, one of the benefits, you know, of the district, and the kind of challenging financial situations that you have, you are eligible for a lot of grant funding. So you know, it can be very well worth it. So schedule, we're gonna build this summer. We are looking to, so we got the funding was secured this past December. We should be finalizing construction documents, I'm hoping by the end of February, and then we'll put together the bid package. So that's all the documents that we put together, and then public or contractors will bid on the project. You know, the district will take the lowest bid that is responsive and responsible, and then we'll work with that contractor. So that'll happen in March, April timeframe, and then we would expect sometime around May, maybe June, you'll start to see equipment being mobilized around. So, and then the startup and testing, hoping to, you know, finish it by December. So, you know, somewhere in the 6-month time frame of where of construction. But you know, as we get a schedule from the contractor, we'll know more. You know, one of the questions that certainly come up with these types of projects is, you know, will there be any outages of water? There will be here and there. Those will be limited. We'll work with the contractor. You know, there are ways we can structure that to make it as least of an inconvenience to the residents, whether that's, you know, a shutdown for maybe a few hours in the middle of the day, or if it's in the middle of the night, that is sometimes an option. But there are some different ways we can kind of structure that and think about it to have the least impact on the community as possible. And that is all I have for slides. So if there are any additional questions or comments, I'm happy to field those.
Thank you, Brad. That was very informative. I appreciate your work of putting the slides together for the presentation, keeping us informed. Are there any questions for Brett regarding, you know, if I would think that, you know, if there aren't any questions right now, and that we've been here for, you know, meeting fatigue, say, I would think they could reach out, you know, reach out to Chris with questions. He can help coordinate with Brett, you know, if like tomorrow you're like, oh yeah, I am kind of wondering about this or that. You know, I guess if the construction wasn't completed by November, it would go into the next year, or is that not a possibility? Was the only question I had.
Yeah, good question on
to where it can go into November.
Yeah, well, so we did push out. I think the district is eligible. The funding and the grant funding goes through, I want to say, the end of 2024. So we did open it up to, if things aren't implemented, we're not as restricted like for like, some of the work, we're not working in streams and wetlands so much. So, it's kind of like, it's somewhat weather dependent, on whether it's raining or not. But yeah, but we do have some more flexibility on this project, and the funding goes to the end of 2024. So yeah, if we need to extend it, we can, but things don't typically get any cheaper. So.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Thank you for the update on that. And you would think that, I know that you're at our meeting every month, and also too, a part of the general manager report can keep us up to date as the events unfold with the construction.
Yep, certainly. Yeah. And then if community comments come up, yeah, certainly, get in touch with Chris and I can answer questions. But yeah, we can, and we'll keep you informed as we start to see more kind of progress.
Okay, great. That sounds good. Well, thank you again for your presentation. And if there are no other questions on this, I will say I'll move on to agenda item 10 incoming communications. I don't see any listed, so breeze by that, and we can adjourn this meeting. So I do appreciate everybody for staying extra for Brett's presentation. Appreciate that. And the meeting's adjourned at 8:56 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brett. Good night.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nate.